So today I want to talk about B-roll and interviews. Now, the reason why I want to talk about it is because as a videographer, one thing for sure, you need to know the difference. And I'll get into the difference between the two and why it matters and the creative control aspect of it. So let's just jump in right to it. Roll the intro.
I look greasy today.
I just finished a shoot at the Ko'olina. Not sure if you guys can see it. I'll show you guys where I'm at. So that is the Ko'olina Chapel over there. I'll just put B-roll in the shot so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Well, I just got done with a wedding shoot. And I'll probably right at this moment, I'm gonna pop in where I shot. Boom, there you go. As you can see, that is the Ko'olina Chapel. I spend quite a bit of my time here actually at the Ko'olina Chapel. This is by Watabe Weddings. My company has a contract with them and I do a lot of wedding filming for Watabe Weddings. Anyway, shout out to Watabe and I appreciate the relationship that we have. Anyways, coming back to this topic. So the reason why I want to talk about this is because I have situations that I have encountered where, whoever that's asking for my service will be like, hey, can you do a job for X amount of dollars? Let's give it a round probably. Can you do it for $500? And I'm not saying that's how much to charge, but I'm just giving a ballpark just to, keep this conversation going. So I would say, yeah, sure. Now, if it was myself back in my 20s, I'm not going to say how old I am, if you can guess my age. So when I was first starting out, I remember yeah, sure, I can do it. But then when I show up for the shoot, they'll be like, oh, can you do this, and can you interview the subject, blah, blah, blah. And again, because I was just starting out, I didn't know better, right? So I had situations where they paid me minuscule compared to the amount of work I did. And then they'll be like, can you do all of this on the list, right? So I'm not saying they're bad people for doing that. They probably were not informed of how, just because you hire a videographer, that doesn't necessarily mean you can ask them to do everything on the list, right? So hence why I want to have this conversation, because I think if you're starting out and you're in that situation or you run into that situation, I hope this video will be a guide to kind of set yourself up for success. Because the last thing you want to do is you accept a job, right? And you basically giving less than what the customer expectation is. And then you get a bad name for yourself. Or it could be the opposite. You did so much for the customer and then you only you didn't get paid for what you deserve for the amount of work you did. And then, you get a relationship where the client will be constantly calling you for work, but they're only going to pay X amount. So this video is to kind of help with that in a way. So the two common types of setups or shots that you're going to be getting will be, B-roll. B-roll meaning that you're getting snippets of visuals that would complement the final edit. So let's say, for example, you're making a highlight for lush greenery of a park. I'm just giving an example just to give an example. And if you're just shooting B-roll and if client asks you, hey, can you get make a highlight video for greenery lush in this park? So the first question I would ask the client would be, hey, do you just want just highlight of different shots just to give an ambient feel of what the park looks like? So in that case, and the client says, yes, that's what I want. And then you'll be like, okay, cool. In my head, I'll be like, yes, those are B-roll shots. So B-roll shots are just getting shots to complement what the end goal of the product would be, or the project would be. Now, in terms of editing, that would mean footage, highlight, like 5-second clips of different variation clips of the part, for example, and maybe music on the bottom. So if you're thinking on the editing perspective, visually you'll have all these clips of greenery, and on the bottom you'll have music, and then you can fluff it out later with an intro and outro and so forth. So that's B-roll, right? But then let's just say the client says, hey, I need to make a highlight video for this green lush.
Ooh, I coughed, sorry, my bad.
I need to make this green lush highlight, and I also want to include someone talking about the park. So that will involve interviews. Now, the difference between B-roll, just B-roll, and interviews is that on the interview side, you have to think about the audio, right? You have to think about capturing the audio of this person narrating or talking or saying like different exciting points about this park, and that way your setup would be different. So first of all, knowing the difference, right? B-roll is just capturing visuals that would complement the video, but an interview is actually like either setting up a sit-down interview in the middle of the park. It could be walking with the subject, and while the subject is walking, it could be, I don't know, hanging on a tree and like, I don't know, I've never done interviews like that, but it would be funny to see someone do an interview hanging from a tree. Don't try this at home. Yeah, that's probably dangerous, but just giving an example. So, and the reason why I brought up that extravagant situation is because that determines what equipment you bring, right? So if, let's say, if it's only a B-roll shoot, right? B-roll, okay, I'm just giving it's a B-R-O-L-L, B-roll, okay? So just making it clear. Now, B-roll will just be you grabbing your sets of bodies of cameras, maybe 2 bodies, and then a set of lenses that you need, a wide, medium, and a close-up, depending on your preference. If you like prime, you like zoom lens. But having those varieties, that would determine, what type of shots, what type of B-roll shots you want to get. Or maybe you want to throw on a gimbal, or maybe you want to have, a couple of drone shots of the area. So see, just knowing that it's only a B-roll shoot, that determines what type of equipment I'm going to bring. Now, if you are doing interviews, right? So then that would change the dynamic. Then you would need, if it's going to be about, let's say, a sit-down interview, then you might need maybe ask the client, or can we provide a stool? Where's the location, specific location you want me to shoot in the park? Then you have to think about, whether you just want a wide shot, a medium shot, or you want a 2 camera. So that would determine how many tripods you're going to bring, how many bodies you're going to bring, what types of lenses you want for the interview. I typically have, for the main shot, I'll probably put like a 50, maybe a 35 millimeter lens, and then for my alternate would be a little bit more of a close-up, depending on the lighting, could be on the left side or the right side, and that would determine my setup for the interview. And so yeah, and then using the B-roll that I'll probably be shooting after conducting the interview, that would complement whatever spoken words that the subject is talking about, the park, and in this example. So just by hearing me out on those 2 difference, you can kind of tell the difference between, just shooting B-roll and if there is an interview element to it. I can go into depth into like, sound quality, because you're talking about shooting out in the outdoors. I can, that would determine the sound quality, but we're not going to get into that just because I just want this video, I want to focus mainly on the difference between B-roll and interview. Now, why it matters, right? So to my first point of, I had situations where, they'll be like, hey, can you do this for X amount of money? And I say yes, we being so naive at the time. Knowing what I know now, if somebody would have asked me like, hey, can you do this? I need to get a highlight video for this, state park or whatever, right? And sure. And the first question I asked, like, hey, do you just want like a highlight video with just like visuals and, a music that complements the visuals, and they'll be like, yeah, sure. So if that's the case, then I know it's just going to be a B-roll shoot, and I know that determines my setup, right? And also that determines the creative control aspect to it as well, which we'll get into in a bit. But want to talk about like why it matters, right? So that determines what equipment I bring and the type of shoot that I'm going to be doing, right? So based on those two elements, now I can determine pricing, because you're going to be charging them your hourly rate depending on how you like to structure it. I like to do it where I get a half day or a full day, and then I have my rates for that. Or if they can't do half day, then I have my hourly rate that I go with. So there's the hourly rate, and there's also I call this a setup rate, which basically coincides with the amount of equipment that I'm bringing that I need to set up. So if it's B-roll, I keep it, my setup rate is like not as much. But if it's in the situation where like, oh no, it's not just a B-roll shoot, I need to actually have you do an interview with this person that's going to talk about the part, and then that would determine like, okay, I need to bring tripods, I need to bring potential maybe not lighting, but maybe like a bouncer to bounce light off, or maybe to deflect light. Do I need, if I'm going to do that, do I need an assistant with me, right? So all of that elements will determine. Obviously, doing an interview is much more expensive than doing just a B-roll shoot, right? So you wanna make the determination from the get-go before you say yes to a shoot, because based on those factors, then you can say, oh, okay, so you want to do an interview with B-roll. Okay, let me send you a proposal or a quote, based on this conversation, and based on that, then you can determine the pricing. So if it's you can have a B-roll, just a quick B-roll type setup, which means it'll be X amount. The next one will be interviews plus B-roll, so it'll be X amount. So that way you can charge for sorry, let me repeat that. So that way you can charge for what you're worth, and then based on that, the client knows what you're going to be delivering, the scope of work, right? And also it'll be a good guideline for you to know, okay, hey, the client knows what the client has determined what they wanted. You can have it on a very simple contract to determine the scope of work, and then the person sign it, you sign it, and then that's the agreement. So you get paid for what you work. So you're not going to be over delivering, which I typically try to do that in all of my shoots. I always over deliver because I like to provide more value. It's a relationship thing, which I might make another video on that, but I personally like to over deliver, just because upbringing, right? Do more, don't just go 100%, do 200%, 300% to what you're tasked for. Right? That's just how I was raised. But yeah, so and that way you'll be satisfied with your work that you're giving, and you'll also get paid the right amount that you are worth. And at the same time, you will develop this new relationship with a client, or an ongoing relationship with a client, and they will, hopefully call you back for the next work, or the next work, or the next. And they will know the quality of your work. And so that's why it matters to determine whether it's a B-roll shoot or it requires interviews. And I'm just giving the B-roll and interviews, and it's just a baseline example, because there's other types of shoots that are more complex, right? But this is just like a common thing that I have experienced between just shooting B-roll and doing interviews. Now, the third point that I want to bring up is, from knowing the difference, from realizing why it matters, the third part is the creative control. Now, I want to say, I think maybe in the beginning of my career, when I just started out, there was not much of creative control on my end because I was just starting out. I was trying to, find my footing. What am I good at? What I'm not. So I think once you develop your own personal brand in the segmented market that you're in, and people kind of know you, then you have more creative control in elements of the shoot. So typically for me, when somebody hires my company to do do a project, they want my style of, whether it's shooting or editing, right? They know my quality of work and they're hiring you for that, right? I'm more storytelling driven, so that's my brand. Like I'm good at the whole storytelling aspect. So if it's like a visual aspect, they know like, okay, Jamie Studios is, they're known for this type of promotional type video, or I need to do some brand storytelling, and they usually hire me to like conduct interviews, and I have my own creative freedom in sense like they know like I understand the concept because they trust me enough that I can produce the types of questions that would make sense if I'm doing an interview, and I know how to drive out the story within the interview process with the subject to create the story arc from that, if that makes sense. So, and knowing the difference between a B-roll shoot and doing an interview shoot, that determines like the creative side of it, right? Like knowing what the client wants, that determines what type of shots you want to get. Maybe some clients like I want to show just like the ambience of the whole area, so it could be like a lot of wide shots instead of like close-ups. Like someone would be like, oh, I want more cinematic. I want to see like flares and bring the ambient of watching a movie, right? So then you want to have more close-up shots, more depth of fields, more shooting on a prime lens kind of a feel, I want, or maybe they'll be like, I want a very story-driven, more impactful. So just by that information, then I'll be constructing questions about, maybe what the park is about, the history of the park. I do my own research on the park, and knowing what the client wants, that determines what types of questions I'm going to ask. Oh, I just crushed a box and sorry, squirrel moment. The box just fell off from the truck in the front and I just crushed it. But anyway, luckily I drive a SUV. So yeah, that would determine what types of questions I'm going to ask. So that determines the creative freedom in that sense, and that determines also the type of creative that you're going to produce. So I hope those three elements, knowing the difference between the two, why it matters, and the creative control of those types of shoot will kind of help you move forward. If you're at least, for the most part, if you're starting out. If you're not starting out and you're just accepting work with not knowing what the scope of work is, I think that's in my opinion, I mean, you could disagree with me with this. In my opinion, that's probably going to shoot yourself in the foot in the long run. One, I think you should get paid for what you're worth. If you have a decent amount of portfolio that people kind of, have said in the past, oh, I love your work, I think you should get paid, for what you are worth. Because again, this is your intellectual property, right? If you think about it, this is the creative part is coming from your mind. You're the one that is going to help sell a particular brand, product, drive a story, make it impactful. They want you to do it. So you should have a little bit more self-confidence in yourself to say like, hey, this is how much I'm worth, and I would like to be paid X amount. But obviously don't be ridiculous on it. Talk to different clients, talk to people that you have done work with, and ask them, hey, I'm thinking of increasing my prices. Hey, I want to establish a baseline for my work at this amount. Is that okay? And you'll be surprised. Like I had clients that, no, you should charge more, man. Your stuff is good. Like you should charge more. Or like maybe it's a little bit too much. And then you might like, oh, and then what would be, if you say it's too much, like what would be your recommendation be based on the market, or based on the budget these types of companies work with. So I think just having an open conversation with your clients and people you work with, or people you're potentially working with, or mentors that you work with, I think that would be very helpful for you moving forward. And I wish I knew that. Like I had to go to trial and error to kind of learn that part of it. And hence why I'm making this video. So I hope that nobody runs into that situation, but like, oh crap, I just did hella a lot of work and I'm only getting paid like peanuts, yeah, I mean, I those are the situations that I like, you're so tired and you only get paid X amount, like, you know what, I'm worth more. Or the opposite, right? It's like, oh man, I had this client made me like pay me so little, and I couldn't deliver, and they're all mad at me now. It's like, yeah, so having that open communication from the get-go, I think, is gonna give you a whole lot of perspective and a whole lot of comfort in conducting your shoots and projects properly and in a professional manner that would have lasting relationships with the people that you work with. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. Again, I really appreciate those eyes and those ears, and I appreciate those subscribers that just subscribe to this channel. Again, this is Yahography. My name is James Yahamram. Thank you again for watching, and please don't be shy and hit that subscribe and like button, and maybe that bell button, so that you can know any going up the hill, so air pressure just changed. Yeah, so thank you again for watching. Please hit this like and subscribe button and the bell button to be reminded on when's my next video that's coming out. I am working on different editing videos that I would want to push out, so stay tuned for that. A lot of the projects that I have are that I can't really reveal the faces or the and because of privacy issues. So I finally got a couple of projects where I can show some stuff. So yeah, I'll definitely make videos on the editing side of things, which I really want to. And then hopefully I'll do some shoots on, or videos on I don't really want to do it for like at a wedding, because I want to be fully focused on the couple, or fully focused on a project. But maybe if there's like an easygoing project that I'm working with, I can kind of do some videos on that as well. But again, I really appreciate anyone watching. I really appreciate all the subscribers, and I really appreciate you all listening. Again, I think I found my rhythm with this whole YouTube thing, and I'm just gonna keep creating and hope to keep growing. Again, appreciate each and every one of you watching this. So aloha, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.